Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Panachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So this evening, we are getting the chance to read from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, rendered by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are going to read from Chapter 2, Contents of the Gita Summarized, starting from text number 41. Yes, 41. 41. Which is page 108, actually. Actually, in Suresh's book, it's not page 108, but text 2.41. So I'll wait for Saul to find his page. Wait, no, Saul. Got it, Saul? So we're going to read 241. So I'll just chant the verse. We can chant it together. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhushakahyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhushakahyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhushakahyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Please chant. Ananta Chaitanya Prabhu. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhushakahyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhushakahyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasaya Atmaka, resolute in Krishna consciousness. Buddhihi, intelligence. Eka, only one. in this, Iha, in this world. Kuru Nandana, O beloved child of the Kurus. Mahushaka, having various branches. He, indeed. Ananta, unlimited. Cha, also. Buddhayaha, intelligence. Avyavisayanam, of those who are not in Krishna consciousness. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Purport. Strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called viśvāsa intelligence. The Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Madhya 22:62 states, śraddhā śabde viśvāsa kahe sudṛḍha niścaya kṛṣṇe bhakti kaile sarva-karma kṛta haya. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family traditions, humanity, or nationality. Fruitive activities are the engagement of one's reaction from past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vāsudevaha sarvam-miti samahatma sudṛḍha. A person in Krishna consciousness is the rare good soul who knows perfectly that Vāsudeva, or Krishna, is the root of all manifested causes. As by watering the root of a tree, one automatically distributes water to the leaves and branches, so by acting in Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. If Krishna is satisfied by one's actions, then everyone will be satisfied. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master as follows. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati kutopi, dhyayan stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam, vande guru shri charanaravindam. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for His mercy 3 times a day, and offer my respectful obeisances unto Him, my spiritual master. The whole process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body. Not theoretically, but practically, when there is no longer a chance for sense gratification manifested in fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. Om ajnana-timirandasya jnananjana-shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama shreshtam manamapi shachiputramatra swarupam rupam tasyagrajam burupurim mathurim goshtavatim radha kundam girivaramaho radhika madhavasham prapto yasya pratita kripaya Shri Gurum tam natosmi vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation one more time. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligent of those who are irresolute is many-branched. I turn my phone in airplane mode, get a lot of notifications. So, this is a very famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Very famous verse, one of the main verses, most famous verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's describing a very important topic, which is resolution on the path of Krishna consciousness, determination. Determination, but also focused determination. That's the point that this verse is bringing out. So, Prabhupada mentions in the last paragraph of the purport that the whole process of Krishna consciousness depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body. So, earlier in the second chapter, there's this verse, Dehinosmin, which is like the seminal verse on reincarnation. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. So, Krishna's giving just a basic thought exercise that you can imagine yourself. You remember being a child, a little small child, baby. Then you can remember being a little older, the body's changing, whatever, you go through puberty and all that nasty stuff. Become a teenager, then eventually a young adult, and then, wherever you are, then the body gets older, disease kicks in, and eventually the body dies. But through all of the stages of the body, one can remember that, okay, yes, fine, although my body was completely different, like for example, when we're born, it's like, how big is a newborn baby? It's like that big, So the body's completely different. And, if you look, like if you saw a picture of me now and then you saw a picture of me as a newborn baby, you wouldn't really be able to see any correlations. The body's absolutely completely different. Excuse me. But the consciousness within inside the body is the same. So in that way you can understand just basic rule of mathematics. Something which is changing cannot be equal to something which is stagnant. Cannot be equal to something which doesn't change. So in this way you can understand that actually there is something beyond the body. There is something beyond the body that is not material. And Krishna says also in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is, of course, as we all know, hesitant to fight against his family members. So Krishna says to Arjuna, Dehi nityam avadhyoyam, dehi sarvasya bharataha, tasmat sarvani bhutani, natvam shochatam arhasi. That within the body, dehi means one who is within the body, there is an eternal observer who can't die. Avadhyoyam. This observer, this soul within the body cannot die. Nainam chindanti shastrani. It can't be cut by weapons. It can't be touched by the material nature. It's like oil and water. So then he says, this living entity is within all bodies. And so therefore, in the discharge of your service, you shouldn't lament for any living entity, because they're not actually dying. It's just simply a change of body. Like Krishna says, just as somebody puts on a certain set of clothes and takes on another set of clothes, the soul is similarly taking on many different bodies. So this is a basic, ABCs of spiritual life. You have to understand that there is something beyond material, beyond the body, beyond even the mind. So this is the foundation, like Srila Prabhupada says. The whole process rests on this. It depends on this knowledge. And not that it's theoretical knowledge, but it's practical knowledge. Not that, okay, I read the Bhagavad Gita and I say, okay, fine, I accept that the Bhagavad Gita says I'm a soul. But that actually we engage in the process to understand that to practically realize that I actually am a soul. To have that be our waking reality. Not just an idea, not just a philosophy, but that's our actual reality, that we're experiencing that. And if you do understand that, if you do have that practical knowledge, then to be resolute in Krishna consciousness is very easy. It's very easy. Because on the other side, one who doesn't have this knowledge, one who does think, I am this body, this everything in relation to this body is all in all, that this is my reality. This is the reality. There's nothing before it, nothing after it. This is it. One who's in that consciousness, what are they trying to do? They're trying to be happy. Everybody's trying to be happy, whether you're in Krishna consciousness or out of Krishna consciousness. But the particular situation that they're in, they have no idea what's going on. They have zero idea what's going on. On the material platform, you can't know anything, let alone anything about spiritual life. But you really can't know anything on the spiritual platform, on the material platform. So the materialists, they're trying to be happy in many, many different ways. But because of the nature of this world, because of the nature of material happiness, if you base your happiness on conditions, what is the nature of conditions? The nature of conditions is that they change. So if you base your happiness on conditions, because the conditions change, your happiness will also change. So people on the material platform who are absorbed in conditional happiness, their minds are always changing. It's this thing, then it's that thing, then it's this thing, then it's the other thing, then it's this, and maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. They're constantly searching for some kind, trying to eke out some kind of happiness, some kind of satisfaction. And because of this, there's this like base level of anxiety that actually materialistic people are always on. Their default existence is anxiety. Excuse me. That's the nature of the mode of passion. We can get some more, yeah. That's the nature of the mode of passion. Is that one who's in the mode of passion, they're constantly in anxiety and they're constantly searching for something else. They can't stick to anything. So, one who's in the consciousness of the body, they're always looking to make the body happy. They're looking for some kind of bodily pleasure. And so, even on a material level, their intelligence is completely irresolute, because nothing that's around them is providing them real, lasting bodily happiness. What to speak of on the path of Krishna consciousness, where there's a significant amount for materialists, there's a significant amount of austerity, giving up certain things, accepting certain things. It's difficult for somebody who's in material consciousness. It's very difficult, actually, Krishna consciousness. Just following the basic principles of, even just living in a sattvic way, it's very difficult for people. It's quite austere, because what they're used to is a mode of existence which is completely ignorant, which is completely passionate. That's what they're used to. So the austerities in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't provide them a lot of bodily happiness. So therefore they can't stick to it, because that's what they're looking for. That's what they're looking for, is just bodily happiness. So when they take to Krishna consciousness, if they try Krishna consciousness, and we see so many people try taking to Krishna consciousness. How many of them really stay? How many of them really get serious about Krishna consciousness? That this is the purpose of my life. Not that this is the purpose of my life as if it's something separate from my life, but this is my life. This is reality. Krishna consciousness is reality. How many people get to that level? It's very difficult. It's very difficult because we're so conditioned life after life after life after life. We've made this griha vrata. Matirna Kṛṣṇe paratasvato va. What is it? Matirna Kṛṣṇe paratasvato va. Man, what's the next line? Oh, yeah. Mito bipadyeta griha vratanam. Adanda gobir vishatam tamisram punaf punascharvata charvananam. Life after life, Even if, we've made this griha vrata, this intense vow, determination to enjoy this material world. And what's the result? If somebody else tries to instruct us that, hey, this isn't what's good for you, you don't listen. If you have, and then what to speak of it coming to your own mind, as if you're going to have this realization by yourself. It never happens. It doesn't happen that people who are in material consciousness, they just pop out of it, And so what's the result? Vishatam tamisram. That you're just put into this hellish existence of punah punah śraddhā charvananam, of just chewing the chewed over and over and over again. This is material life. This is the result of absorbing oneself in material consciousness. Therefore, vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudṛḍha, that it's very difficult to find a person who's really serious, who really understands vasudeva sarvamiti, who really understands that actually everything is Krishna, belongs to Krishna, should be used in Krishna's service. Very difficult. Manushanam sahasreshu kashid yatati siddhaya yatatam api siddhanam kashin mam veti tattvatah. That out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection. And even of one who has achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So to find a devotee of Krishna, to be in the company of devotees of Krishna, it's very rare. But even if one is in the association of devotees, even if one is practicing Krishna consciousness, if they still keep their material desires, if they still are attached to living an easy life, to not struggling, not suffering, then still, if they're attached to, or I should say, if they're averse to it, if they're attached to avoiding it, then Krishna consciousness will be very, very difficult for such a person. Srila Prabhupada said that an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness don't mix very well. Because the idea is that Krishna consciousness is actually difficult. We say chant and be happy, yes. In one sense, it's simple. There's really not a lot of steps in our process. Chant and be happy sums it up. Take prasadam, dance in kirtan. That's our process. You don't need anything more than that. Study shastra, of course, go out and preach. That's our process. It's quite simple, actually. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us a very, very simple process. Srila Prabhupada has delivered it to us. Simple process. But because we're so conditioned, because life after life after life after life, we've just been turning our back on Krishna. Because, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that song Amar Jivan, he's saying, I was in the womb. I think it's this song. He's saying, I was in the womb, Lord, I promised to worship you, but then I got out and, my family was so loving and they just wanted the best for me, whatever they wanted, They filled me up with ideas of sense gratification. This is the idea. Kapila Deva also states this in the 3rd canto. This is the idea. That life after life after life, we've been brainwashed into thinking that sense gratification is all in all, that sense gratification is the real thing. But it's not. It's not the real thing. But still, this idea makes Krishna consciousness very difficult, and therefore some devotees, it happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens that, you get attached to, whatever you get attached to. You got your own room, or you got... I guess I'm speaking, as a brahmachari living in the temple, this is my experience. Whatever, you get your own room, you got your nice prasadam, 3 meals a day, and then you got, whatever, this, and you got that. And it's very easy to get comfortable. It's very easy to have the fire under you go out. It can be very easy. And it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. But one who understands, I'm actually not this body. I'm actually not this body. That this body literally has nothing to do with me, except for the fact that I'm inside of it and that I can use it to serve Krishna. This is our real philosophy. This should be our real understanding. And one who is perfect in their understanding, this is their reality. Srila Prabhupada, this was his reality. What other 80-year-old man could travel the world like he did, sleeping as much as he did, 2 hours a night translating? I mean, he'd sleep 2 hours a night because he was translating. Go to bed at 10, wake up at midnight, translate until 4, Mangalarti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, his schedule was absolutely inconceivable. I don't have it on hand, but anyway, if you look it up, he has a schedule. When he would read, when he would write, when he would go to, whatever, his court duties, when he would take prasadam. Inconceivable. But that's because these devotees were so fixed in their Krishna consciousness, so resolute, vyavasayatmika buddhi, that their intelligence was completely fixed on Krishna. That this is their reality, it's no big deal. What's the big deal? If you understand, I'm not this body, why be afraid of death? Why be afraid of suffering? It has nothing to do with us. Like Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj had no fear. Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him in so many different ways. Throw him off a cliff, feed him to snakes, whatever, cast spells on him, have these, whatever, demons chop him up, this thing, that thing, boil him in oil. So many things, trample him under elephants. So many ways. What was Prahlad Maharaj's consciousness? He was had his mind fixed on his worshipable Lord. So one who understands, I am not this body, I am a servant of Krishna. We hear it over and 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 over again. This is like, I am not this body, I am a servant of Krishna. That's like what we hear over and over. Srila Prabhupada stressed this point so often that even it might come off as repetitive. But why did Srila Prabhupada stress this? Why didn't Srila Prabhupada emphasize, all these higher topics? Why didn't Srila Prabhupada emphasize that we should constantly be studying, reading about, hearing about, meditating upon, the Rasa Lila, or different other higher topics, reading, whatever, Ujjvala Nilamani, Vidagdha Madhava, all these different things. Why didn't Srila Prabhupada emphasize that? Because it's not cheap. These things aren't cheap. And until one has it drilled into their head, until one actually realizes, I'm not this body, I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, you have no hope of understanding these things. Zero hope of understanding these things. These things are meant for liberated souls. So in order to have resolute purpose in Krishna consciousness, we have to understand the simple fact that I'm not this body and I'm a servant of Krishna. And we can understand it by the instructions of the spiritual master. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasada yasya prasadad nagati kutopi dhyayan stavam sasya shastri sandam vande guru shri charanarabindam. By the instructions of the spiritual master, we can come to understand this. What is the spiritual master telling us? The spiritual master is telling us, don't engage in these sinful activities, these activities which further bind us to this material world, and accept these processes, chanting Hare Krishna, going to, temple programs, reading Shastra, studying Shastra very scrutinizingly, not just reading, but studying Shastra. I recently heard a pastime of Srila Prabhupada where devotees, I think he asked devotees, he said, are you all reading my books? And they said, yes, Prabhupada, we're reading your books an hour a day, whenever we can. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, not reading, studying. Are you studying my books? There's a difference. Not just that, because we can read the words. I can read the resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge, Vasudeva Sarma. I can read the words. That's easy enough. But to take them in, to really take them in, what does it require? Trinadapi suniche natarod apisa hishnanamanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. It takes being more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, thinking all respect belongs to others, none belongs to me. Srivada Prabhu's translation. That's what it takes. It takes humility, submission to the spiritual master. These topics, even the topics presented in Bhagavad Gita, we may think of it that this is the basics of spiritual life. And yes, they are. But we're too dull to understand it. So only by the mercy of the spiritual master can we actually understand these things. So when we read Shastra, There's a reason we read that before, for example, before Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad Gita class, we chant the Mangalacharan. The purpose of doing that is to invite the blessings of the previous acharyas and invite the blessings of the Supreme Lord to make our study of Shastra fruitful. And we should think that when we're studying Shastra, I'm not trying to conquer the knowledge. Not that I go in and whatever, memorizing shlokas is nice, memorizing certain logical points is very nice. But if we really want the message to enter into our hearts, which is the point of reading Shastra, whether we know so many shlokas or don't know so many shlokas, the point of reading Shastra, hearing from the previous acharyas, is so that this message enters into our heart and pierces all of our material coverings, cuts open the knots in our heart, breaks the steel frame, so that we can achieve a place at Krishna's lotus feet. So we have to read and hear very prayerfully, not thinking that I'm reading this and I'm going to memorize this and that, but that I'm here to associate with Krishna. I'm here to associate with Prabhupada. And whatever I'll glean from that association is only by their mercy. This is our understanding. That's why Srila Prabhupada instructed us. 1 hour a day, it's not optional, he says. 1 hour a day, at least that we read Srila Prabhupada's books. Because Srila Prabhupada knew his position as Jagat Guru. No question about it. That's why he instructed us to worship him. That's why he instructed us to follow his instructions. Srila Prabhupada knew. So he's giving us his association in his books. He's giving us his association in his talks, in his kirtans, everything. Srila Prabhupada is giving us his association. So let's take it. And when we take it, then we can have real, factual, substantial realization in Krishna consciousness if we actually take what Srila Prabhupada is saying to heart. Even the most basic points. Like just think, I am not this body, I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. We've heard it so many times that, at least my experience is, sometimes you become desensitized to it. But even just that, that's a very high, from where we're looking, that's a very high idea, high understanding. It's very difficult to come to. You may be, you may say, okay, well, I'm not attached to this thing, I'm not attached to that thing, I'm not attached to whatever, I'm not attached to, if people praise me or if people don't praise me, I'm not attached to, sex pleasure, I'm not attached to this or that. But even then, if somebody came up to you and said, okay, I'm going to kill you, you would think, oh, no, please don't. The body is such a deep attachment. It's such a deep attachment, and until you really meditate and contemplate on death, really try to imagine, what's it going to be like when I give up my body? How difficult, like for example, if you're taking a course in college or something like that, and you're reading the book, you get an idea, you're reading the textbook, you get an idea of what the final exam is going to be like. So from reading, and just practically speaking, you can think about death. What's it going to be like? It's scary. At least it's, for somebody who's in bodily consciousness like me, it's like, whew, It's a very, very high thing to not be attached to the body. So it's something we have to hear over and over and over again. And that's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized it. So, but one who knows this, one who understands that I'm a spirit soul, I'm not this body, it's very easy to be determined in Krishna consciousness. Because what else is there? What is it? That song, Kabe Hobe Bolo, Shedi Noam, or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, Dhana Janayar, Kobita Sundari, Bolibo na chahi deha sukha kori, janme janme dao he gaura hari ahoituki bhakti charane tomar. So he's saying that when will that day be mine? Kobe hobe bolo dino amar. When will that day be mine? I'll just turn my face completely away from desires for wealth, desires for beautiful women. What time is it? Okay. And just, be completely disinterested in understanding that this has nothing to do with me. Has nothing to do with my who I really am. And then he prays, Janme janme dao he gaura hariya hoituki bhakti charane tomar. Oh Gaura Hari, birth after birth after birth, just give me a hoituki bhakti, uninterrupted, unmotivated bhakti to your lotus feet, devotional service to your lotus feet. That's the real thing, is devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what does Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? He says, Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shikha. He says, go out and tell everybody. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shikha. Go out and tell everybody, chant Hare Krishna. Worship Krishna. And follow Krishna's instructions. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction. So therefore, the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and others also, go out and we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. We go out and we give the conditioned souls a chance, the pivotal moment of their entire material existence, unlimited, infinite, practically years. And we go out and we give them their chance, not their one chance, but a chance to actually turn to Krishna and understand who they really, really are. When you read Srila Prabhupada's books and when you hear Srila Prabhupada talk about Krishna and what Krishna consciousness is, going back home, back to Godhead, my God, just something so amazing Srila Prabhupada has given us. The opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead. Just think about what's going on in the spiritual world. Krishna's there with the cowherd boys. Every day they go out and play in the forest with all the cows and calves. They're taking lunch together. They're sporting together. And there's no anxiety. No anxiety, no worry, no anything. Nothing of this material world. No, don't have to worry about death. Don't have to worry about your death or the death of your loved ones or losing your things or anything like that. Just Krishna. Only Krishna. Just serving Krishna. Having a loving relationship with Krishna. And it's described when Krishna was taking lunch with all the cowherd boys. All the cowherd boys were thinking, Krishna's my best friend. I'm Krishna's best friend. They're thinking, he's just talking with me. He's just relating with me. He's just reciprocating with me. That's Krishna. Unlimitedly loving and completely all-powerful. He can reciprocate with every single, like for example in the rasa dance, Krishna he expanded himself to reciprocate with all of the gopis' love. And all of the gopis were thinking that Krishna is dancing with only me. So this is Krishna. Krishna loves us so much. You can't imagine Krishna's love for us. It's unimaginable. It's inconceivable how much Krishna loves us. And if you look around this world, just see how much facility Krishna is giving for ignorance. All the different kinds of bodies that Krishna allows people to have, all the different types of sense gratification Krishna's sanctioning. So much facility for ignorance. Just imagine the facility that Krishna will give for somebody who just wants to turn to him. Just even a little bit. It's a very amazing thing Srila Prabhupada has given us. The opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead, and be with our real friend. Krishna's our only real friend. What is that? Ami bina bandhu jaro ke ache tomar. Lord Chaitanya says, this is a song by Bhakti Thakur. Lord Chaitanya says, besides me, what friend do you have in this world? Ami bina, no, anyway, I'm forgetting the line, but he says, just to come save you, I have taken birth. Just to come save you, I've taken birth. Other than me, what friend do you have in this world? And that's true. What's the nature of material relationships? It's only based on sense gratification. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, and we'll both have our backs scratched. But if you stop scratching my back, you know, I'm done with you. That's the nature of material relationships. What? That's not love. Real love is with Krishna. Unmotivated, uninterrupted, loving devotional service to Krishna. That's real love. Because it's not based on sense gratification. It's not based, well actually it is based on sense gratification. It's based on Krishna's sense gratification. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami states in the Adi Lila of Caitanya-caritāmṛta that real love is for Krishna. Love in this material world is for our sense gratification. Love in the spiritual world, real satisfying love, is for Krishna's sense gratification. And Prabhupada gives the analogy, famous analogy, in this purport, that just like watering the root of a tree, all the leaves become naturally hydrated as well. If one just loves Krishna, everything works out. It may not work out exactly how we may like it. Like Krishna says, to somebody I favor, I take everything away from. It may not work out at some points exactly how we may like it. But everything Krishna does is absolutely, completely perfect. Everything that Krishna arranges for us is perfect. And so if when one turns to Krishna, they're no longer under the influence of the material energy. Krishna's personally taking charge of them. This is how much Krishna loves us. Krishna's personally taking charge of our life, of our karma, of our whatever. So everything that he arranges for his devotees is perfect, even if it might seem imperfect. Even if this situation, you know, this bad thing happens, that bad thing happens, this bad thing happens. Everything Krishna arranges is only, everything Krishna arranges for his devotees specifically, and everyone, but specifically for his devotees, it's only meant to bring them closer to him. Because what does the devotee do when he's in difficulty? He calls out, Hare Krishna. He calls out to Krishna. He takes shelter of the holy name of Krishna. Takes shelter of hearing about Krishna's pastimes, praying to Krishna. He completely, fully takes shelter. His consciousness is completely fixed on Krishna. And so like this, he makes rapid spiritual advancement. Only when we're in the pressure cooker, only when we're in the fire, that's when we make real advancement. And it's not that we have to wait, whatever, for our arm to get chopped off or something like that. Or whatever, our best friend to, whatever, die. It's not that we have to wait for something bad to happen to us in order to make spiritual advancement. Srila Prabhupada is giving us the opportunity to burn in the fire of Sankirtan. To go out and to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. And in that way just go out and engage in our duty of suffering for Krishna to make real spiritual advancement. Not that you can't make real spiritual advancement doing other services, but I guess I'm just highlighting this particular one. That this is a very good way to make spiritual advancement. To preach Krishna consciousness boldly, unceasingly, uninterrupted, not thinking. Srila Prabhupada was so bold. But he didn't care. Well, I guess anyway, you could qualify that. But Srila Prabhupada is only concerned with presenting the truth. And if anybody didn't want to hear the truth, if they didn't want, of course, there's time, place, and circumstance that one can take into account. But still, we don't compromise the truth. And that was Srila Prabhupada's mood. He came in the mood of delivering all the fallen conditioned souls by giving them the real truth of Krishna consciousness. Not that we cheat people by giving them some half-baked thing. Because you can only get so far. If you follow a half-baked Krishna conscious program, you'll have half-baked Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada gave us the real thing. And if we follow it, understanding this is my life, understanding, having knowledge of the goal, that I want to go back home, back to God, and that's where I'm supposed to be. I'm not even supposed to be here right now. That I just want to go back home, back to Godhead and serve my spiritual master and serve Krishna in the spiritual world. If we have knowledge of this goal and we have knowledge of the instructions, how to get there, sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana, then to have resolute intelligence, it's very easy. It's not such a big thing. It comes naturally, actually, automatically. Not that we have to work separately for it. If we have proper knowledge under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master of our current situation, of the instructions of how to progress, and of the real goal of Krishna consciousness, then our intelligence will naturally be very focused, because we'll understand the urgency and the need and the real nectar that is Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop there, I guess, and then we can, if anybody has questions, or on Zoom, maybe if anybody's on Zoom. If there's no questions, that's okay.
Nice class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Something? Something, Suresh? No, Vijay Krishna. It's 2:30 a.m. for Vijay Krishna. So, do you have anything?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice class. Sorry, I was kind of dozing off for a bit. Tired. But you mentioned it's very rare for somebody to take up Krishna consciousness and have the association of devotees. So that's why it's this this idea of Vaishnava aparad is really kind of a big issue, because such souls are so rare that you offend them, you're just like, oh, like you're digging yourself in the hole.
Yeah.
Really deep.
Krishna takes it personally, actually. Krishna takes Vaishnava aparad personally against him. It's an offense toward him. I mean, what to speak of also, the Vaishnavas, depending on the severity of the offense, of course, may reject you. But yeah, very thin line. Very thin line. Something to watch out for.
At the end of this purport, it says, one who is not firmly fixed in the mind by various types of fruitive activities. So does that mean I'm not fixed, but I'm still engaging in devotional service,
Well, the idea is that, because it says one who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. So Prabhupada is saying, basically, if you're not firmly fixed in mind that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, then naturally you'll be invested in your material body, which means naturally then you'll be invested in its pleasure, which means that naturally you'll start to do things, fruitive activities, to get more pleasure. And then that just completely diverts you from, actually the text 44, 3 verses later, Bhoga Aishwarya Prasaktanam, Tayaparhita Chetasam, that somebody who has, or who's attracted to bhoga and Aishwarya, to opulence and enjoyment, that it just steals away their intelligence completely, and then they have no hope of having fixed intelligence in Krishna consciousness. That makes sense?
It does. Thank you. Because I know Krishna says, and I think in the 6th chapter or the 5th, he says one who has a flicker in mind should bring it back.
Yeah, always bring it back to Krishna if our mind ever diverts. Yeah,
because sometimes my mind goes on a tangent.
I know the feeling. Okay, well, I guess we can end there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.